Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I'm very happy to stand before you this morning. And as you have seen in those video clips that were shown there, I think it was the last of the clips where the president talked about respect for the opposition. Say that in a democracy, opposition has got a critical role to play, and that is going to respect the right of the opposition to do so. So it is in exercise of that duty and mandate that we are doing what we are doing here today, this morning, as an opposition. Well, 3 years ago today, that's when those promises were made. President Uhuru Kenyatta presented a glittering picture of what his administration was out to achieve to make the lives of Kenyans better. Last week, the president kept to the tradition of glitter and presented what, in his view, is the perfect state of the Kenyan nation, which is everything is running well and smoothly. Today, we go beneath this false glitter and share with you, fellow Kenyans, the rot, the lies Kenyans are being fed, and the failure that is trailing the nation and which the Jubilee continues to deny. Since the year 2013, everything that can go bad has gone bad. The happily ever after image that the Jubilee is trying to portray is a plain lie. Cost of living, the first surprise to hit Kenyans within the first 3 months of Jubilee coming to power, with the sharp rise in the cost of basic goods and services. By September of 2013, the prices of most of consumer goods had shot up by at least 7 shillings. Depending on the manufacturer, the price of the processed milk ranged between 50 and 56, up from 45. Prices of phones went up by 16%. This was as a result of the increase in VAT charges. It has affected bus fare and also rents. Today, Kenyans spend more than half of their earnings on basic needs such as food, housing, and clothing, leaving them with very little to save and invest in business. Expenditure on food, take the lion's share of the household budget, stands at 47.4%. Now the next thing I want to talk about is food security. Jubilee rightly picked food security as a national priority. It promised to put 1 million acres under irrigated agriculture. The first step to turn this promise into reality was the Galana irrigation project in Tana River. That project is now officially a scandal and a subject of investigation. The irrigation project was launched prematurely without a proper feasibility study. Kari advised that more time be allowed for soil tests to determine what could grow on the farm. Experts questioned the economic viability of growing maize under irrigation. But Jubilee was keen to be seen to be doing something and went on a launching spree. In the end, the project produced only 10 bags rather than the targeted 40 bags of 90 kilograms per square acre, per acre. After about 7 billion shillings sunk into it, the 1 million acre food security project is now a failure and a mirage that has been recommended for the investigations by the struggling Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. Jubilee has failed to promote an innovative, commercial-oriented, and modern agricultural sector. Failures in the policy and institutional framework have brought the tea, coffee, sugar, cereals, and peripheral sectors to their knees. The sugar sector has the added challenge of coping with an ill-advised trade deal with Uganda that exposes Kenya's markets to flooding by cheap imported sugar, not even from Uganda, but from Brazil, using Uganda as a transit. Infrastructure is the next subject I want to talk about. Number one is railways. Jubilee promised to improve the rail network in the country, including links with major cities. It also promised to implement and actualize the LAPSET project, in addition to constructing a series of commuter railway networks in all major cities in Kenya. It also promised to upgrade the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport to a regional hub, in addition to expanding and modernizing existing international airports in Kisumu, Mombasa, and Eldoret. You need to know that all these projects were actually started by the Grand Coalition government. These are not new projects initiated by Jubilee. So Jubilee was just supposed to be implementing what had been started by the Grand Coalition government. Today, the only rail infrastructure project that the Jubilee has to show is the one it did not start, the Standard Gauge Railway. The only thing it has done to the rail project is to increase its cost. First, it was 220 billion when we left office, which rose to 327 billion after the China Railways was allowed to include locomotives, passenger cabins, and wagons. The cost later rose to 447 billion to cater for land acquisition, loan insurance, and loan processing fees. To this, Kenyans will add another 150 billion for the newly conceived Nairobi-Naivasha line, which has become more expensive than the Nairobi-Mombasa line. And it needs to be known that in Naivasha, that railway is going into a private land owned by some people who are known in this country. Second is roads. In the State of the Nation address, President Uhuru Kenyatta said the government has constructed 3,000 kilometers of roads in the last 3 years. This was a cold-hearted lie. And I'm talking here as a former minister for roads, public works, and housing. And I have the facts. The government constructed no single road in the last 2 years. It spent those 2 years pursuing some 260 billion shillings, that is $2.48 billion, from local banks to construct 10,000 kilometers of tarmac roads in 3 years under an annuity program. Annuity, this program is something that is strange and new to this country. And I asked to be told in which country this program has been successfully implemented. That program hit a dead end when the commercial banks refused to fund a project that had been termed as one of the key milestones of the ruling Jubilee administration. Would-be lenders disagreed with the government on the rate of interest to be charged on loans issued to contractors. That disagreement also resulted from the Jubilee's failure to manage the economy. And so we challenged the president to show Kenyans the 3,000 kilometers of roads it has constructed in the last 3 years by category and region. What class of roads, from where to where? The president cannot cannot take routine and periodic road maintenance, including graveling and earth roads, pothole patching, bush clearing, and drainage clearance, and report it as an achievement. We challenge the president to give Kenyans a breakdown of the GEOK funding as budgeted by stating which roads were earmarked for development in the financial year 2013-2014 to 2015-2016, and now 2016-2017. How much was spent and when they got completed. 3 LAPSSET projects. LAPSSET stands for Lamu Port, South Sudan, and Ethiopia Transport Corridor. This is a project, a landmark project which we conceived to link Africa, so that Mombasa to Juba is just one phase. Second phase was to take it from Juba to Bangui in Central African Republic, through Congo, up to the Cameroonian port of Douala, creating a land bridge between the Atlantic Ocean and the Indian Ocean, and opening the interior of Africa for trade. This project, which is a landmark, as I've mentioned, is clearly in jeopardy. A combined result of Jubilee's failing economic diplomacy and Kenya's diminishing clout in the region. Now you see they're competing with Tanzania about the pipeline. For Konza ICT City, President Mwai Kibaki laid the foundation stone for this project. That was to be a modern information and communication technology center at Konza. For all intents and purposes, and despite the Jubilee's self-declared digital inclination, this project is now dead. 4 is electricity. Jubilee has changed the story on its pledge to generate additional 5,000 megawatts of power by 2017. Jubilee is 99% off the target, just 16 months to the next general elections. The government has pumped only 675 megawatts since it assumed power in April 2017. And those projects which they have commissioned were projects whose construction started under the Grand Coalition government. We want them to tell us which new projects they have initiated since they came to power. The President's delivery unit recently revised the narrative to say that the overall vision of taking our generation capacity to 5,000 megawatts remains, but it is highly unlikely we will get to the 5,000 megawatts by 2017. We trust Jubilee at our own peril. With Nairobi, the regional hub. This was again another Grand Coalition government to turn Nairobi into a regional hub that will be competing with Dubai, and increase the passenger capacity from 5 million to 20 million. The Jubilee regime has undermined and more or less killed the possibility of ensuring Nairobi continues to be the regional business and travel hub in Africa. The cancellation of the Greenfield Nairobi Airport will deny Kenyans strategic expansion and kill our competitiveness. Further, the cancellation at a minimum cost will cost Kenyan taxpayer 15 billion shillings. Because you see, an international contractor was hired, contract was signed. The contractor brought his equipment here, brought his engineers and workforce here. The President went and they broke the ground. The construction work started. Then all of a sudden, they now cancel this contract midstream. This basically means that the contractor is going to sue for damages, and that's estimated about 15 billion shillings. The government is saying it is unable to raise 56 billion shillings to construct this project. Yet in Eurobond alone, over 100 billion shillings is missing. As I've said, that this cost may further rise to unknown figures if the government is taken to court. Corruption and financial management. Jubilee pledged to make the public procurement regime open, transparent, and corruption-free in order to ensure that all deserving young entrepreneurs have the opportunity to secure government tenders. IFMIS was to be at the center of this would-be revolution. For a moment, all looked well. The National Treasury facilitated connectivity of the 47 counties to the IFMIS system. Technical and functional teams were sent to the counties to provide support and train throughout the year. Then, the NYS scandal happened, and IFMIS itself became a fraud. The 791 million shillings NYS scam was executed well within the auspices of IFMIS. The Eurobond funds have been stolen with IFMIS firmly in place. Under the Jubilee, with the IFMIS in place, the country has witnessed more procurement-related fraud and appeals than at any time in our history. It has delayed critical projects, killed some, and substantially raised the cost of many others. Under Jubilee, despite the tough talk, corruption has become our second name. This year, Kenya was once again ranked among the most corrupt countries in the world. The newest Transparency International report ranked Kenya at position 139 out of 168. Kenya retained the same score, that is 25 points out of a possible 100 it had in the year 2014. Corruption continues to raise the cost of infrastructure development in our country while siphoning off scarce resources that could improve the lives of our people. Some surveys show that corruption in Kenya cost local firms 6% of their revenues. And last year, remember when President Obama was here, he mentioned what we have been saying before, that Kenyan youth lose over 250,000 jobs annually due to corruption. The struggle against corruption is one of the greatest struggles of our time. And in Eurobond, you know, the government has given so many different excuses or reasons. They said, oh, it was spent by the department. They offered to give breakdown in 3 weeks. The 3 weeks came and passed. Then they said that ministries were now working out the records and this will be made available. Finally, they came and said that ministries could not exactly pinpoint because it was lumped together with other monies from the treasury. This week, the Minister for Finance came out with yet another excuse, another reason. This is now, I think, the 5th version, saying that they spent 120 billion, the Eurobond money, to pay debts incurred by the Grand Coalition government. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me go as I move towards conclusion. Let me talk about overall state of our economy. Vision 2030, which is the blueprint developed under the Grand Coalition government through advice of what we call National Economic and Advisory Council, NESC. It is anchored on 3 pillars of economic, social, and political development, and 7 priority sectors. It seeks to transform the country into a rapidly industrializing, middle-income country, providing a high quality of life to all citizens in a clean and secure environment. These lofty goals will be achieved by attaining and maintaining a 10% economic growth by 2012 and sustaining that rate of growth from 2013 till 2030. Jubilee administration has failed to attain the most important target under the nation's economic blueprint. It's plain for all to see that the annual economic growth at 5.4% in 2013, 5.2% in 2014, and 5.7% in 2015 is well below the nation's overarching economic target. We are nowhere near the double-digit growth that the Jubilee had promised. And you need to know that a big percentage of what they are quoting out is being contributed to by the construction of the standard gauge railway. If that was not there, the rate of growth would be below 3%. The manufacturing sector, Jubilee has failed to deliver a robust, diversified, and competitive manufacturing sector by failing to implement the special economic zones, that is SEZs, and free trade areas as planned under the Vision 2030, and that is Mombasa, Lamu, and Kisumu. Instead, they have come up with this idea of an inland free port at Naivasha. Wholesale and retail sector. Kenya's large informal and small and medium enterprises sector has not benefited from the programs and policies to formalize the sector and transform it into an efficient, innovative sector with a diversified productive range. The Uwezo Fund, the Youth Enterprise Fund, and the Women's Enterprise Fund have all become part of the Jubilee's failed programs. Many policies and programs simply collapsed under the weight of rampant corruption unleashed by the Jubilee administration. Tourism sector. Tourism is one of the nation's key export earners. The Jubilee administration has presided over its total collapse. The president said all is well with tourism. Yet the number of tourists visiting Kenya has dropped from 1.8 million in 2013 to barely 1 million in 2015. Tourist resort cities that were to be started in Mombasa, in Lamu, Turkana, have effectively been abandoned by the administration. And just you read in Daily Nation of this week, over 10,000 workers have been laid off in the coast hotels over the last 2 months. Financial services sector. Kenya has a relatively well-developed financial services sector. The vibrant banking and capital markets, but collapse looms large. We see wholesale failure and the neglect by the Jubilee administration in this critical sector, which has systemic impact on the economy. The ongoing turbulence with the collapse of banks creeping in and again point to a crisis whose consequences will be felt long after the banks have been shut. The fact that the Central Bank of Kenya today has no board of directors, I repeat, you need to know that the Central Bank of Kenya today has no board of directors. That speaks volumes about the commitment of the government to prudent financial management. You don't have a chairman, but there is no board of directors. So finally, we want to tell fellow Kenyans that what was being delivered is a Jubilee propaganda, not a State of the Nation address. That the nation is ailing, the nation is not healthy, the nation is hurting. Kenyans feel it in their pockets all over the country. Kenyans are an angry lot because a hungry person is an angry person. You would like to tell them, however, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. They have 16 months to endure before the time for liberation comes. And when that time comes, CORD, as a coalition, will be there to stand with the people of Kenya, and we are fully equal to the task. Thank you very much.
Right Honorable Raila Odinga. Ladies and gentlemen, we have about 10 minutes.